All right, everybody. Hi, Ceramics 2 students. It's Mrs. New. We are back here with the Stiff Slab box project, and this is the last of the 3 videos that I've made to teach you how to make this project. Today, we're going to talk about cutting the lid of your box and adding your sculptural handle, or what I like to call your doodad. That's what I call it. Okay. So we have our some examples here. So I want to show you a couple different ways you can cut the lids of your box, okay? So one of the ways you can cut the lid of your box is with a gentle curve, and that works pretty well for this project. Remembering that I do have a little cookie cutter shape here of a leaf. There's a leaf wrapping around. I've got my kind of wood grain texture mat. So my box is interesting from all the way around. I've got a little acorn here. And then I went ahead and cut the lid at the gentle curve, okay? And so that fits on pretty nicely. And again, I would cut that lid when it's more leather hard. Here's another one, or actually is it this one? Okay, here's another one that, this one has a key. So you can see it doesn't have any kind of handle up top. So I really want you to put something up here that's the focal point of your piece. But this one does have the key, which is the little fat triangle. And so that one is good to go as well. Now, neither one of these 2 boxes, the way that they're cut, need what's called a flange. A flange is kind of a fancy word for a little rim. So let me show you a box that does have a flange. First of all, great texture mat. We have a doodad that kind of matches the design of the box. And then when I open it up, because it's a straight cut, on the lid, there's this little extra ledge right here. And that's just made with a small slab, and it's slipped and scored and blended in with a wet paintbrush. So what that does is it kind of catches that lid. See how I can't move it around? Otherwise, with a straight cut, it would just slide right off of there. So I really need a flange if I'm gonna have a straight cut. Here's another box that has a flange, and let me show you why. This person cut the lid at an angle. So this is a cool idea, but this lid would go sliding off if it wasn't for the flange. They also have a great doodad up here at the top, a nice textured coil with some details here. I'll show you how to do that. But let's look at the lid. So see how it's cut at an angle? And let's find the flange. So the flange isn't on the lid, but it's on the box itself. So here's that little edge that is holding that lid in place. So if it didn't have that, that would simply slide right off of there. So the flange is really important for certain styles of cuts. If you're not sure how to cut your box, or if you will need a flange, just come and see me. They are a little problematic because what you have to do is kind of, you know, make one to put inside, then you have to kind of fit your lid on and keep kind of futzing around with it until it fits properly. But if you're gonna do the straight cut or some kind of interesting angled cut like this, you definitely will need one. Other boxes that need a flange most of the time are triangle boxes as well. So now that you have some ideas for different ways to cut the lid, I'm gonna set these aside and I'm gonna go back to my example box that I'm building, and we'll talk about what to do next and some ideas for the doodad, or the focal point at the top. So my bag, I cut out all the pieces day 1. I assembled day 2. So now it's day 3. And I did put a little wet paper towel in with my box this last time, but here it is. It's all together. It's looking pretty good. It's smoothed out. So what I might want to do for my work today is transfer it to a banding wheel so that I can easily turn it around and manipulate it as I'm building this focal point up here on the top. I also wanted to show you this tool today. These live in this box, and it says texture blocks for handle making and church keys. So let me kind of show you what's in here. These are the texture blocks. So there's 2 sets of these. They're in these little bags, so please put them back in the little bags. It just helps protect the wood. These are church keys. These are great for like pushing in texture. Some of you might remember an artist spotlight about an artist who does use those. So those are in there too, but I'm just gonna get the texture blocks out today. And if you haven't used these are so much fun. So in Ceramics 1, when we do like trays and stuff, you might have seen these before, but they have these grooves cut into them. And I can do some fun things, rolling different ways to make different cool handles primarily using coils. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some soft clay and make a couple coils and think about my my doodad for the top of my box. So your top of your box, it could be a cookie cutter shape. It could be something sculptural that you design, like let's say you want to sculpt a flower or something like that. But one quick and easy way to make a doodad is to use a coil. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll out my coil, and depending on what I'm doing, I might kind of make a few here. I want to just kind of show you some ideas. So if your coil starts to get lumpy, just twist it opposite ways like a breadstick and keep rolling, kind of roll from the center out. I don't want to make it too thin, but what I can do is some fun textures. So these texture blocks do different things depending on how I line them up. So if I have these lines going this way and these lines going the opposite way, let's just kind of see what I'm going to get. Now always make sure that you you don't press too hard when you do this part. Ooh, look at that, isn't that cool? So I could do some different things here. I could do just kind of like a purse handle kind of handle, which is kind of like the other one that you just saw, where, you know, it would come up like this, and I would make maybe like a little flat part. So that could potentially go on the top of my box like this. Hopefully you guys can see that, right? So that might work for a little handle on the top. Let's see what else we can do here. There's some other kinds. Let's kind of do a different one. Let's do a different texture on this one. So if I line these up going this way and these going the same way, the grooves are all going the same direction. I'm gonna get some stripies. So that's kind of fun. So I could do, I don't know if this is an appropriate name, but it kind of reminds me of like a cancer awareness ribbon or something like that. So it's kind of a swirl around like that. So this can look really nice for a doodad on the top. So if that felt a little too bulky, maybe something like this. Now again, that might be a little too small of a coil for the size of my box. So I also need to consider, you know, when I'm actually using this to lift the lid, is that going to be big enough? And so I think that coil's a little small, but you get the idea of the shape of that one. So the purse handle, the cancer awareness ribbon, kind of the ribbony shape. What else could I do? I could do something where let's see, let's do a different texture on this. So remember, the bigger board's always underneath. So if these are going this way and these are going the opposite way, let's see what I get if I do that. I should get kind of a checkerboard. So that's kind of fun. So maybe with this one I do, I don't know, I don't want to call it the dog poop, but that's kind of what I call it. But maybe it's kind of like a little spiral. Okay, let's call it the spiral or the snake. Kind of reminds me of like a little snake sitting there. So that could be something that goes on the top of my box, right? Kind of this little, I don't know what we'll call that. We'll call that the snake. Something like that. Okay, just try to think of a couple ideas. And what I do with my doodad a lot of times, you guys, is I just kind of play around with different ones until I find one that feels right. It feels like it fits the style and the shape of my box, and just kind of have, it's something clicks, right? And it just feels like a good design. So let's see, if I go straight and the opposite way, I might get sort of a diamond checkerboard. I could do kind of a swirled purse handle, I guess you could call it. So it kind of goes like this, and make sure you kind of leave some flat part here because you need some area to slip and score that on there. So that could go there on my box. Like, that looks kind of fun and cool. So there's lots of different things you can do. The other thing you can do is just a knob. So if you wanted to do something that's kind of a knob, what I would suggest is kind of making a oval of clay and then sort of, you know, paddling it out and making a knob shape, I guess. Okay, I'm gonna show you the one thing I don't want you to do on this project here in a minute. But let's say I have kind of a squarish knob. I could do something like that on the top of my box. Hopefully you can see this in the video, and just kind of have like a little knob. So that might work. Here's what I don't want you to do, okay? I don't want you to just roll out a ball and like stick it on there like that. First of all, I think that doesn't look great. Secondly, these tend to break off, okay? Because unless you really, really blend that and slip and score it, they come off so easily. So the knob is better because there's just more of a flat spot to attaches. So try to avoid just putting the snowball up on the top. I mean, I feel like you can do better than that, right? I mean, even this would be much more sophisticated and give you a prettier final result than just sticking a ball of clay up there. So try to think of something you can do that's a cool doodad. So for mine, I really like this one that I just made. So I'm gonna use that one. And let's talk about cutting the lid. So I have it on the banding wheel, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and draw the line first, okay? If I'm worried about getting it straight, move my texture blocks over, I can use a ruler. There's a whole drawer of rulers. So let's say I wanna do a straight cut. Now remember, if I do it straight all the way around, I'm gonna need a flange. So I either need a key or a gentle curve if I don't wanna mess around with the flange. But I want you to measure down from the lid of your box about, I want about an inch at the most maybe, and then draw the line first. Now again, these are called a banding wheel because when you go around something like a pot or a box, it should make a band all the way around. So using a ruler, having some precision here, trying to make this straight. The hardest part about this is, you know, getting it to line up all the way around. So I'm gonna make just a straight line, and guess what? If I goof this up, I can just use my thumb and kind of blend it out. I'm not cutting into this yet. And with any luck, it'll match up all the way around. Mine did pretty good, okay? And because I don't wanna goof around with the flange, I am gonna make a key. So someplace on my box, I'm gonna go ahead and do the triangle kind of style of key. You can also do, there's a couple others. You can do like the mouse hole kind of key. And some of them I have drawn on the board, or you can come ask me. So that's gonna be my key, all right? And before I cut the lid, I would attach my doodad to this, only because it's kind of more solid, but I guess it doesn't really matter if you attach it before or after. I usually attach it first, and I cut my lid last. So now it's just like cutting the top off a pumpkin. I'm gonna hold my blade of the fettling knife close so I can get that control. And again, the nice thing about a fettling knife is no matter how thick my slabs are, it should cut at different thicknesses. Now I want you to notice that I'm taking my time and I'm not like seesawing this back and forth. It's a smooth motion. I always say in Ceramics 1, it's like cutting a slice of cake. If you were at the birthday party and someone asks you to cut the cake, right? You wouldn't like go and make all these jagged cake slices, right? You would make like you'd want to go smooth and cut the cake really nice and smooth. So I'm kind of pulling the blade back out around the corners and trying to follow my line. If I get a little off from the line, it's not the end of the world, but it's a guide, right? So now with any luck, I can go ahead and cut this off. Oh, it's so beautiful. So pretty excited about that. Now you want to take your fingers and take off this sharp edge. Remember, when things get fired, they get harder. So I don't want this to cut anybody, including myself. So take off that sharp edge. I'm trying not to tweak the sides of this shape too much, but I want to run my finger on that. And remember all that frosting I get? Well, guess what? This inside of the lid, I also need to frost that now that I have it off of here. So I'm gonna set my lid aside for a minute. Let's look at the box itself. It looks really clean. It looks really nice. Again, I would just take my fingers, blunt this edge. You could even do it with a little round sponge. Don't get it too soaking wet though. And just kind of little details like this, okay? So now with some soft clay, I'm going to frost the inside of my lid. And actually I'm gonna backtrack. Maybe it's easier to do your doodad very last because I still have to frost all this. So I'm gonna lay in that baby coil. I could use a little wooden tool or my finger. Okay, I'm gonna go in there and frost all of that and make this really nice and clean and frosted, blended. And then very last, I'll go ahead, really scratch and attach and slip and score my handle on. Okay, so those would be the last steps. Also, before you put it on the greenware shelf, I think it's a good idea to tip your box over. Someplace on the bottom, carve your name. You could even carve the year or the date. It's kind of fun on some of my old ceramics projects that I still have. You know, they're from when I was in high school. So it's kind of neat to look back at those memories and just to remember, you know, 2021 is the year we're in right now. So it's kind of fun to carve the date, just like if you signed a piece of artwork. A lot of times artists will sign it with the date. So same with your ceramic work. All right, so I'm gonna keep on frosting this. I'm gonna get in there with probably crosshatch with a needle tool and put a lot of slip in and put my doodad up here. And then when it's all done, it can go on the greenware shelf, and I can be so proud that I made this pretty tricky project, but I did a great job, and I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that I made this week. So I hope that you're enjoying making your box project and that you have some success with it. And if you have any questions about designing your doodad or cutting your lid, please just come find me, and I'd be happy to help you finish your box and have it look awesome. All right, thanks you guys. Have a great day. Bye.